Ladies and gentlemen, there comes a moment in every soul's journey when the weight we carry becomes heavier than the steps we take. A moment when our hearts whisper, "You cannot do this alone." And it is in that sacred whisper that God invites us to release what burdens us. When you give God your worries, you are not losing control. My friends, you are gaining freedom. Because the doors you could not open with your own strength begin to swing wide with His power. Today, I want to remind you, the moment you surrender fear, heaven begins moving in ways you never expected. Surrendering your worries to God creates space for divine breakthroughs. And to understand this truth, we must first understand the nature of worry itself. Worry is not just a thought. It is a weight, a force that pulls at the edges of the heart, draining strength, dimming clarity, and clouding the vision of what is possible. When a person is consumed with worry, they are not truly walking, they are dragging themselves through life. They are not breathing deeply. They are gasping in small, broken pieces of air, hoping that somehow the day gets lighter on its own. But life has a way of reminding us that the load will not lessen until we choose to loosen our grip on it. Many people try to fix everything alone. They stand in front of closed doors, shaking the handle, pushing the frame, pounding with their fists, insisting that the door must open because they are trying so hard. But effort without trust becomes exhaustion, and exhaustion without surrender becomes despair. When the human heart has done all it can do, that is usually the moment when God is waiting for us to finally say, "I can't carry this anymore." It is in that surrender, not a surrender of weakness, but a surrender of wisdom, that divine breakthrough begins to move quietly into place. When you give God your worries, it is not like giving someone your possessions. It is not a transaction. It is a transformation. You are releasing the storm inside you so a calm greater than your understanding can rise. You are stepping back from the battle long enough to see that the victory was never meant to be won by your strength alone. When you hand your fears to God, you are unburdening the soul so that miracles have room to breathe. Breakthroughs do not bloom in tight, clenched spaces. They bloom in open spaces, spaces created by surrender. Some people think surrender means giving up, quitting, or losing control, but that is not true. Surrender means trusting that God has a wisdom deeper than your worry, a plan wider than your fear, and a timing more perfect than your panic. When you surrender, you are not stepping away from the problem, you are stepping into the power that knows how to solve it. Imagine holding a fist so tightly around a stone that your hand begins to ache. You grip it because you believe letting go will leave you with nothing. But letting go is the only way to free your hand to receive something better. Worry is that stone. It fills your hands but empties your spirit. Surrendering your worry gives your soul back the strength and softness it lost. God cannot place blessings in hands that are already full of fear. So when you surrender your worries, you are not losing, you are positioning yourself so that God can begin to place new beginnings, unexpected opportunities, and divine direction into your life. There are people who wake up every morning with a storm already swirling in their minds. Before they even take their first step, their hearts are running a race. They worry about what will happen, what might go wrong, what they cannot control, what they cannot predict. And in that constant cycle of fear, they forget that faith is not found in what you control. Faith is found in what you release. Releasing your worry is not denying reality. It is acknowledging that your reality is in the hands of a God who sees beyond today, beyond the struggle, beyond the pain, beyond the fear. Worry blinds you to what God is preparing for you. Trust opens your eyes again. When you surrender worry, you begin to move from fear to freedom. Fear traps the mind in loops of what if. Freedom lifts the mind into the possibility of even if. Even if the road is long, God is with me. Even if the night is dark, God is guiding me. Even if I don't see a way, God is creating one. This shift does not happen in the mind first, it happens in the heart. You have to decide that God is bigger than what scares you. You have to choose peace even when your circumstances offer chaos. You have to breathe deeply and step back enough to let heaven step in. Divine breakthroughs are not always dramatic, loud, or sudden. They are often quiet, gentle, and unfolding. But the only way to notice them is to clear the noise of worry long enough to hear the whisper of God. Worry shouts, fear echoes, anxiety rattles. But God whispers, and his whisper carries more power than the loudest storm. When you silence worry, you amplify his guidance. You begin to see small signs you once overlooked. Doors you thought were locked begin to show cracks of light. People you never expected begin to cross your path. Opportunities you thought were out of reach begin to move toward you. This is the nature of divine breakthroughs. They arrive when your hands, heart, and mind are finally open enough to receive them. Many people ask for God's help but refuse to release their worry. They pray for peace but cling to fear. They beg for direction but refuse to stop steering everything themselves. But surrender is not a halfway act. It is a full release. It is saying, I will do my part, but I will no longer try to do God's part. When you surrender your worries to God, you are telling the universe, I believe something greater than my fear is working on my behalf. That belief creates movement. That belief opens doors. That belief transforms what seemed impossible into something within reach. Think of a seed planted in the soil. The seed cannot grow if the ground is too tight, too dry, too crowded. It needs space. It needs room to push upward. Your life is that seed. Worry is the crowded soil. Surrender is the clearing of space. Divine breakthrough is the sprouting. When you remove worry, even little by little, you make room for God's plan to take root. You allow growth where there was only pressure. You allow possibility where there was only panic. You allow hope where there was only heaviness. And in time, the sprout becomes a branch. The branch becomes strength. And the strength becomes a tree that stands because it grew from surrender, not struggle. Some people believe God cannot move in their lives because they see no progress. But often God is waiting for one thing, the release of worry. When you finally say, God, I give this to you, the atmosphere around your situation begins to shift. The energy inside you begins to lighten. The path ahead of you begins to rearrange. The things that were stuck begin to loosen. The people who were meant to help you begin to appear. This is not coincidence. This is clarity. Worry blocks clarity. Surrender exposes it. When you are no longer clouded by fear, you can finally see the steps God is placing before you. There is power in saying, God, I trust you with this. There is power in taking your hands off a situation long enough to let God put his hands on it. There is power in choosing faith over fear, peace over panic, and surrender over struggle. And every time you choose surrender, heaven responds. Sometimes the response comes quickly. Sometimes it comes slowly, but it always comes. Breakthrough is not a matter of chance. It is a matter of alignment. You align with breakthrough the moment you release the burden you were never designed to carry alone. And as you surrender day by day, moment by moment, breath by breath, you begin to feel something shift deep inside you. You begin to feel lighter. You begin to breathe differently. You begin to walk with more confidence, not because everything is perfect, but because everything is held. You begin to sense that something is working in your favor even when you cannot see it yet. You begin to understand that surrender is not a loss. It is the doorway to the life God always intended for you. Trust opens doors that your effort alone could never unlock. And understanding this truth requires a deep look into what trust truly is. Trust is not passive. It is not sitting still and hoping life rearranges itself in your favor. Trust is an active, living force that rises inside the heart when everything else falls apart. It is that quiet inner knowing that speaks louder than worry, louder than doubt, louder than fear. Trust is not born in comfort, it is born in uncertainty. It is shaped during the nights when you cry, because you don't know what will happen next. Yet something in your spirit whispers, keep moving. Trust is the hand you extend into the unknown, believing that God will catch you not because you see where you are going, but because you know who is leading you. There are times when you try everything humanly possible. You push on doors until your knuckles hurt. You run toward goals until your energy breaks. You plan, you strategize, you try again, and still nothing moves. And in that stillness, frustration grows. You may look at others and wonder why their paths seem to open with ease while yours remains locked, sealed, blocked, barricaded. But doors do not open simply because you push harder. Some doors respond not to strength, but to surrender. Some doors are unlocked not by force, but by faith. When God sees you trying to carry the weight by yourself, He waits, not because He wants you to struggle, but because He wants you to realize that the door you are pounding on is not your door. The moment you shift from striving to trusting is the moment new doors begin to swing open without you having to break yourself trying to force them. Trust, real trust, is understanding that God's not yet is not the same as never. It is knowing that delay does not equal denial. It is accepting that a closed door could be the very thing saving you from walking into a place that was not meant to hold your future. So many people get angry when doors stay shut, not realizing that sometimes God closes a door because danger lives on the other side. Sometimes He closes it because the blessing is not ready. Sometimes He closes it because you are not ready. And sometimes He closes it because He has a much bigger door waiting for you, one you would never reach if you kept forcing your way into smaller spaces. Trust is understanding that God sees what you cannot and knows what you do not. There are breakthroughs that only trust can invite. Breakthroughs that require you to step back from your own efforts and allow God to weave the path in His own timing. When you trust, you stop living with clenched fists and begin living with open hands. Open hands receive more easily. Open hands carry more lightly. Open hands release without fear. Life becomes less about fighting and more about flowing. This does not mean life becomes easy, but it does mean that you no longer have to drag your soul through every difficulty. Trust becomes the wind that moves you, the light that guides you, the strength that holds you upright when everything feels shaky under your feet. Some people believe trust is naive, that trust means ignoring reality or refusing to acknowledge the seriousness of life's challenges. But trust is not denial. Trust is defiance. It is standing up in the middle of the storm and saying, I refuse to collapse here. It is looking at uncertainty and daring to believe that something good is still possible. Trust is spiritual courage. It is the decision to believe in a positive outcome, even when nothing around you suggests one. Trust turns impossibilities into possibilities, not because your situation changes instantly, but because your inner posture shifts. And when your inner world changes, your outer world begins to rearrange itself to match that belief. Doors that are closed to fear begin to open to faith. Doors that respond to trust reveal themselves in unexpected ways. Sometimes the key to the door is a person you have not met yet, an opportunity you have not seen yet, a message you have not heard yet. Trust keeps your heart soft enough so that when the moment arrives, you are ready to step into it. Worry closes your heart. Trust expands it. Fear shuts your eyes, trust opens them. Anxiety blocks your vision, trust clears the fog. With clarity comes direction. With direction comes progress. With progress comes the momentum that carries you into the very doors you once thought were impossible. Trust is also deeply personal. It requires removing the layers of past hurt, disappointment, and broken expectation that have piled up around the heart. Many people stop trusting because someone betrayed them, because life disappointed them, because their efforts failed. They build walls around their hearts, and while those walls may protect them from pain, they also block the very blessings meant to reach them. Trust is not built on the reliability of people, it is built on the reliability of God. People change, situations change, emotions change. But God remains steady, consistent, unwavering, unshaken. When you place your trust in Him, you are anchoring yourself to something immovable. There is a sacred power in trusting God even when everything seems uncertain. It is a declaration that you are choosing faith over fear, patience over panic, surrender over control. Trusting God does not mean you sit back and do nothing. It means you do your part and believe He will do what you cannot. When you trust, you walk differently. You wake up differently. You make decisions differently. You stop chasing every open door and instead follow the path that aligns with your spirit. You stop forcing connections and start recognizing divine appointments. You stop worrying about who left and begin understanding who was never meant to stay. Trust guides your steps so that your energy is spent in the right direction, not wasted on the wrong one. There are people who spend years standing at the wrong door, hoping that persistence will change what God has already closed. They cry at the threshold, beg for entry, and lose themselves waiting for something that was never meant to be theirs. Trust is the voice that gently says, it is time to walk away from this door. And when you walk away, you discover new hallways filled with possibilities you could not see before. You discover that the closed door was not a punishment. It was a redirection. And the moment you accept the redirection, you begin to see that God was guiding you, protecting you, preparing you. Trust does not eliminate disappointment, but it transforms it. It teaches you to see loss as a lesson, endings as beginnings, setbacks as setups. Trust rewrites your story from the inside out. It turns your struggles into stepping stones. It teaches your heart to remain soft even after it has been hurt. It gives you the strength to try again, dream again, love again, hope again. With trust, you begin to recognize that nothing you released was meant to stay, and everything meant for you will always find its way. Trust gives you a new relationship with time. When you trust, you no longer rush. You no longer panic. You no longer fear delays. You begin to understand that divine timing is not human timing. You begin to see that seasons unfold exactly when they are meant to. Flowers do not bloom in winter, and blessings do not arrive before their appointed season. Trust gives you patience to wait without anxiety, to move without urgency, to rest without fear. It teaches you that what is meant for you will not pass you by. And what passes you by was never meant for you. Trust is not a single decision, it is a lifestyle. It is choosing moment after moment to lean on God rather than leaning only on your own understanding. It is choosing peace over panic, purpose over pressure, and faith over frustration. Every time you choose trust, you strengthen the muscles of your spirit. Every time you choose trust, you expand the path before you. Every time you choose trust, you open another door inside yourself. And as you continue walking in trust, you discover that life begins responding to that trust with opportunities, connections, breakthroughs, and blessings that effort alone could never create. Trust transforms you into someone who does not chase doors, but attracts them. Doors begin opening not because you force them, but because your energy aligns with what God has prepared for you. When you trust, you become ready to walk through the door without hesitation, ready to receive the blessing without fear, ready to embrace the path without second guessing. Trust gives you the courage to step forward even when the future is unclear. And that courage becomes the key that unlocks doors your effort. Never could God work silently, but His results speak loudly. And to understand this truth, we must look beyond the surface of our lives and into the quiet spaces where transformation begins long before we ever see it. There are seasons in life when it feels like nothing is moving, nothing is changing, and nothing is improving, even though you pray, you hope, you wait, and you try. But silence does not mean absence. Stillness does not mean inactivity. God does some of his greatest work in the moments when your eyes see nothing and your ears hear nothing. The roots of a tree grow strongest underground where no one can witness them. The foundation of a building is built in hidden layers beneath the earth. The most beautiful parts of a sunrise begin when the world is still dark. And in that same way, God begins shaping breakthroughs where human eyes cannot see, creating solutions long before you are aware a problem even exists. There are people who think God is not listening because he is not loud. They expect thunder, signs, flashes of clarity, dramatic shifts, immediate answers. But God is not always the God of fireworks. He is the God of whispers, nudges, gentle shifts, small openings, subtle alignments. He moves like the quiet sunrise that gradually turns darkness into morning, not in one sudden burst, but in soft layers of light that slowly transform everything. By the time you realize the change, it has already been unfolding for a long time. God had been preparing, adjusting, organizing, removing, restoring, all without making a sound. Silence is not the sign of a still God. It is the sign of a working God. When God works silently, he is building what cannot be rushed. He is shaping what cannot be forced. He is protecting what cannot be exposed too early. Many people want the blessing before the preparation, the miracle without the process, the breakthrough without the growth that must come first. But God will not open a door prematurely when stepping inside would crush you. He will not elevate you into a season you are not matured enough to handle. He will not push you into opportunities before your character is ready for the responsibility. So instead, God works quietly, strengthening you in small ways, teaching you lessons piece by piece, healing your wounds one layer at a time, even when you feel untouched, unchanged, unnoticed. The invisible work happening inside you is often the reason the visible blessings later shine so brightly. Silence can feel like abandonment when you do not understand its purpose. You may cry into your pillow at night asking why God is not responding, why he is not revealing answers, why he is allowing confusion to stretch across your path. But often, God is not withholding answers. He is shaping you into the person who can handle the answer when it finally arrives. He is not delaying your life. He is aligning your life. You may think you are waiting on God, but there are moments when God is waiting on you, waiting for you to grow, for you to release what harms you, for you to heal from what scarred you, for you to learn what empowers you, for you to see what blinds you. Growth rarely makes noise. Healing rarely makes noise. Preparation rarely makes noise. And yet, these silent seasons are the very foundation of the loudest breakthroughs. Think of the caterpillar hidden inside the cocoon. No one sees its transformation. No one hears the process. No one witnesses the struggle as the creature dissolves into something new. But when the cocoon breaks open and the butterfly rises, the result is undeniable. In the same way, God's silent work within you shapes your wings long before you ever realize you have them. You may think you are stuck, but God may be transforming you. You may think you are being overlooked, but God may be hiding you for protection. You may think you are behind, but God may be preparing you for a leap far beyond what you imagined. Sometimes the silence is not about you, it's about the people around you. God may be changing hearts, moving circumstances, shifting environments, redirecting people, opening paths, closing harmful doors before you ever arrive. When you ask for a blessing, you do not just step into the blessing, you step into a situation, a set of relationships, a place, a purpose. God works silently to prepare the environment so that when you enter, everything fits, flows, aligns. If he rushed the process, you might walk into a storm meant to be avoided. If he moved loudly, you might try to interfere with plans that require divine precision. So he works silently, not to confuse you, but to protect you from what you cannot see. There are moments when silence itself is the message. Silence tells you to pause, to be still, to listen inwardly rather than outwardly. It tells you that growth is happening even if your world looks the same. It tells you that patience is your ally, not your enemy. It tells you that trust is not a theory, it is a necessity. It tells you that your next chapter is being written, even if you have not been handed the pen. God's silence is often the canvas on which the loudest blessings are painted. When the breakthrough finally arrives, it rarely comes gently. It comes like a door flying open after years of being locked. It comes like a river rushing through a desert that was once dry. It comes like laughter rising in a heart that forgot how to feel joy. And in that moment, every quiet day makes sense. Every unanswered prayer becomes clearer. Every season of confusion reveals its purpose. You realize that God was not ignoring you. He was preparing you. He was aligning opportunities. He was strengthening your spirit. He was softening your heart. He was sharpening your vision. He was rearranging the world around you so that when the blessing came, it could fit your life without breaking it. God's results are often loud, not because He wants to overwhelm you, but because He wants you to remember His faithfulness. When the healing comes after years of tears, it is loud. When the opportunity arrives that you thought was lost forever, it is loud. When the right people appear after a season of loneliness, it is loud. When the path becomes clear after months of confusion, it is loud. These moments speak loudly because they reveal the depth of what was happening silently all along. Loud results are the echo of silent work. They are the evidence of divine intention. They are the reminder that silence was not the absence of movement, it was the birthplace of it. Many people lose their peace because they confuse silence with punishment. They believe that if God were truly present, He would speak, He would answer, He would show, He would reveal. But some lessons require silence to be understood. Some strength is built only in the quiet spaces where you learn to stand without constant reassurance. Some clarity comes only when the noise around you fades. Some faith grows only in the places where your heart must stay open, even when heaven is still. Silence is not God distancing Himself. It is God drawing you inward, deeper, closer to the foundation of faith that cannot be shaken. When you begin to understand this, the silence becomes less frightening. It becomes less frustrating. It becomes an invitation rather than a burden. You begin to notice small signs, tiny miracles, gentle nudges, quiet impressions that were invisible when you were busy complaining about the silence. You begin to see how God arranges encounters you didn't plan, protects you from situations you didn't understand, and guides you through choices you didn't know were significant. The invisible hand of God becomes more noticeable, not because He starts working more, but because your eyes become trained to see Him. And little by little, trust begins to grow. Not the loud, dramatic kind of trust, but the steady kind, the anchored kind, the kind that whispers, even though I do not see the answer, I know the answer is being prepared. That kind of trust is what gives you peace in the waiting, strength in the uncertainty, and courage in the silence. It keeps you steady when life is unsteady. It keeps you faithful when life feels unpredictable. It keeps you hopeful when life feels heavy. And every time you hold on to trust in the silence, you are watering the seeds God planted in the unseen. Then one day, without warning, the silence breaks, not with noise, but with clarity, not with confusion, but with direction, not with fear, but with peace. And you begin to realize that the God who seemed silent was actually the God who was working behind the scenes in ways far too detailed, far too intentional, far too loving to be done in a hurry. His results speak loudly because they reveal the depth of His care, the precision of His timing, the perfection of His plan, and the magnitude of His love when God opens a door for you, no force on. Earth can shut it. And to understand the full depth of that truth, you must first understand that divine doors are not ordinary doors. They are not tied to human approval, timing, resources, or circumstances. They do not depend on who supports you, who doubts you, who tries to hinder you, or who fails to appreciate your worth. When God opens a door, it opens with a strength that does not belong to this world. It swings wide with a purpose that cannot be denied. It stands firm with a power that cannot be overturned. And it leads to a place you could never have entered by your own limited strength alone. There are moments in life when the doors you expected to walk through remain tightly closed. You knock, you wait, you hope, you pray, you push, you try again, yet nothing moves. That door stays still as stone. The silence behind it feels like rejection. The stillness around it feels like abandonment. The waiting outside it feels like confusion. But closed doors are not always signs of failure or punishment. Sometimes they are signs of protection. Sometimes they are signs of divine redirection. Sometimes they are signs that what lies behind that door is too small for the magnitude of the purpose placed within you. So rather than trying to force what resists you, trust that God has a different door in mind, one with your name written on it long before you ever imagined stepping inside. When God opens a door, it often opens in a way you did not expect. It may open through a stranger, through a moment of surrender, through a setback that turned into a blessing, through a loss that forced you into a better path, through an opportunity that appeared out of nowhere. God's doors rarely look logical, but they always look purposeful. They appear at the perfect moment, sometimes in the middle of disappointment, sometimes at the end of your strength, sometimes when you feel least ready, sometimes when you have let go of trying to control everything. That is because divine doors require space. God waits until you release what was never meant for you, so he can lead you into what was always meant for you. When God opens a door, no enemy can close it. People may criticize you, but they cannot cancel the door. Others may envy you, but they cannot block the door. Circumstances may challenge you, but they cannot shut the door. Even your own doubts cannot shut what God has declared open. You may hesitate, you may fear, you may wonder if you are worthy, but the door will remain open because God does not open opportunities based on human perfection. He opens them based on divine purpose. What he has planned for you cannot be stolen or stopped by anyone, not even by the mistakes you have made or the fears you still hold inside. There are seasons when God keeps you in a hallway. You are no longer where you used to be, but you are not yet where you are going. The hallway feels uncertain. It feels long. It feels silent. But the hallway is not a punishment. It is preparation. It is where God strengthens your character, deepens your patience, sharpens your discernment, and heals the wounds that would have weakened you inside the next chapter. Hallways train the heart to recognize the right door when it finally opens. They teach you to pause, to listen, to trust the timing rather than rushing into something just because you are tired of waiting. The hallway refines you so that when the door opens, you are not only ready to enter, you are ready to stay. Some doors God opens look unfamiliar. They may not resemble your plans. They may not match your expectations. They may lead you toward paths you never imagined walking. But divine doors are not designed to match your imagination. They are designed to match your destiny. When God opens a new door, it is often the very thing you once prayed for, but no longer recognize because it arrives in a form that stretches you, grows you, strengthens you, challenges you, and elevates you. Divine doors rarely keep you comfortable. They call you into expansion. They call you into purpose. They call you into courage. They call you into the full measure of who you were created to be. You may have stood before many doors that closed painfully, jobs that rejected you, relationships that ended, opportunities that slipped away, moments that disappointed you, seasons that broke you. It is easy to believe those closed doors define your worth, but they do not. They define your direction. Closed doors are not your identity, they are your guidance. They point you away from what cannot hold your future and toward what is preparing to embrace it. Every door that closed behind you is part of the map that leads you to the door God will open before you. When God opens a door, the atmosphere changes around you. The people you meet begin to shift. The opportunities you attract begin to align. The clarity you lacked begins to emerge. The inner strength you lost begins to rebuild. The confidence you misplaced begins to rise again. You feel a quiet pull inside your spirit, a nudge, a whisper, a sense that something is moving, even if you cannot fully explain it. This is what it feels like when heaven rearranges your path. Divine open doors are not always dramatic on the outside, but they are always transformative on the inside. Sometimes the door God opens for you is not a door to a higher place, but a deeper place, a deeper understanding of yourself, a deeper relationship with Him, a deeper sense of peace, a deeper inner strength, a deeper clarity about what you deserve and what you no longer need to tolerate. Divine doors are not always opportunities. Sometimes they are awakenings. Sometimes God opens the door that leads you inward, into the places where healing was waiting, where courage was buried, where truth was silenced, where purpose was hidden. Divine doors elevate your soul before they elevate your circumstances. There are moments when the door God opens requires you to leave behind the familiar, to walk away from people who cannot follow you, to release habits that drained you, to step out of environments that limited you, to break cycles that kept you small. Every open door demands a shedding. You cannot carry everything from your old life into your new season. Some things must fall away so the next chapter can rise. Letting go is not loss, it is alignment. And alignment is how you walk with grace through the door that God has prepared. When God opens a door, He also equips you to walk through it. You may feel unprepared, you may feel unqualified, you may feel unsure, but God does not open doors for the perfect, He opens them for the willing. He equips the faithful. He strengthens the humble. He supports the obedient. He empowers the courageous. The very act of stepping through the door becomes the training ground for everything that comes after. You grow as you walk. You learn as you move. You strengthen as you trust. You rise as you obey the whisper that tells you this is the moment you prayed for, even if it does not look like what you expected. When God opens a door, it carries His signature, peace, even if the path is intimidating. Even if the journey feels uncertain, even if the steps ahead are unfamiliar, a divine door is marked by a quiet sense of rightness deep in your soul, a knowing, a calmness, a spiritual confirmation that does not come from logic but from alignment. Peace is the stamp God places on the doors He opens. Confusion is the sign of a door you forced. Peace is the sign of a door God assigned. There will be people who question your door, people who doubt you, people who whisper, criticize, minimize, or try to convince you to turn back. But the door was not given to them. It was given to you. And what God gives you does not require validation from others. It requires obedience from you. When God opens a door, you do not need the approval of people, only the courage to step forward. The same God who opened it will sustain you once you walk through it. And as you continue moving in faith, you begin to realize that divine doors are not random blessings. They are intentional alignments. Every difficulty you overcame shaped you for this. Every heartbreak you healed from prepared you for this. Every wound you survived strengthened you for this. Every loss you endured humbled you for this. Every prayer you whispered softened you for this. Every tear you shed baptized you for this. God does not open doors simply to elevate you. He opens doors to honor the journey you walk to, become the person capable of entering them.